Hello and welcome to Comprehension Points video Snark. If you came here because you thought that this was an audiobook, please stick around and maybe learn some reading and listening comprehension skills. I read books and discuss what went wrong and how they can possibly be fixed. I'm continuing my read through of Betrothed by Kiera Cass. Not the first video, go check out the others, links are posted below. Chapter 37. Hollis and Eaton sit down to discuss stuff between their two kingdoms, despite how in the previous chapter they'd both implied that this wasn't their first meeting, but whatever. The first thing Hollis wants is for Isolatians to train Koreans in the way of medicine. Eaton gives Hollis some land, which is the thing that she'd proposed Quentin should do to appease Jameson. Hollis protests a little since this in no way benefits Eaton, but he goes her into accepting anyway. This leads to the usual bickering. In the background, Eaton's girlfriend looks uncomfortable, and Hollis thinks that both the girl as well as her own boyfriend will be pleased once this is over. After that, they agree to take a break and continue this tomorrow. They talk briefly about a ball being held later that night. Hollis asks that Eaton's girlfriend Ayana take a turn around the garden with her. As they go, Ayana asks what Hollis wanted to talk to her about. Hollis says that even though this will likely be their last in-person meeting, the two of them should get to know one another better. Ayana asks what that's supposed to mean, but Hollis doesn't exactly respond. Instead, she asks Ayana how she'd met Eaton. It doesn't matter. None of this is going to be important, and I don't care. Ayana asks how Eaton and Hollis met each other, but stops Hollis as she goes back a little too far to talk about Silas. Says that everybody knows about that, but Ayana isn't stupid. She knows that there is something between Hollis and Eaton. Hollis assures her that Eaton will always come second to Kuroa, but Ayana is quick to reply that while that might be true for Hollis, in Eaton's eyes, Ayana will always be second to Hollis. Hollis is quick to assure her that once Eaton and Ayana marry, things will be different. Hollis briefly talks about her own boyfriend and then drags Ayana out to make a flower crown for that night. Chapter 38. Hollis had her seamstress attach the golden feather to the dress she was to wear for the ball. She can't tell Eaton how much he still means to her, but she can show him with the feather. As she leaves the room, she's approached by two men who say that they accompanied Hollis and Eaton to confront Jameson. They gush about how much Eaton talks about Hollis's bravery that day and how awesome a queen that she is. In the dining hall, she can't help but think about the last time Iceland and Kuroa citizens were both in there and how much has changed since then. Whitley and Scarlett show up, having been briefly delayed by their arrival. Hollis begs them to tell her exactly how Eaton is really doing. They explain that Eaton has been really cleaning house following the stink of Quentin's rule, but the people have embraced him in all of his changes. As Hollis and Eaton move to have the first dance of the evening together, Hollis is surprised that Eaton has her handkerchief from the tournament. He says that he's had it with him always and that it brings him luck. But they both lament over how much time that they wasted tormenting each other and how they're probably only going to have this one night. After their dance, Hollis says that it's time to unveil the new stained glass window. It's an image of Hollis and Eaton standing with Eaton's army. Eaton gets all choked up, almost confesses his love in front of everybody, and then quickly runs off. After he leaves, Whitley congratulates Hollis for uniting the two kingdoms. Hollis then decides that enough is enough. She calls her mother and sister to her side as well as Nora and Valentina to help her with something. Chapter 39. The five women pore over legal text to find something that could help them. Eventually, Valentina finds exactly what they need. After this, Hollis goes to break up with her boyfriend, only to find that he's left her a letter and run off. Hollis is secretly relieved. A little hurt, but mostly relieved. She goes to Eaton's room, only to find that Ayana had also left a similar letter for him. She sends everybody else away and tells Eaton that she and Ayana talked earlier, but she also confesses that her own boyfriend has run off too. She then proposes that the two countries become one, and they start to talk about their dream castle, the one that they had talked about when they'd gone to Quentin's castle for that wedding. When she explains about how it's normal for kingdoms to absorb new lands, Eaton kisses her. He asks if they could really mesh two different people, but Hollis says that they're not half as different as they used to be. They joke that the citizens should have to wear purple, which is a mix of the two royal colors. And with that, the tiny series comes to a close. So, theories wrap-up thoughts. Now that I can put the author's end goal into perspective, I guess I can kind of understand where she is coming from, but that somehow doesn't excuse how poorly written that the Silas-Hollis love story was, especially when you consider that Hollis's love for Silas was enough to convince her to run away from everything that she'd ever known and to be shunned from society. We never actually saw that happening, only simply awkward flirting one day and then her randomly being in love with him the next. However, I do wish that there had been way more hints at the endgame Eaton Hollis in the first book. Yes, they did have a relationship, but it was so negative that I never once considered, yes, the real romantic partner, especially when Hollis was currently being torn between two other romantic interests at that time. I wish that the second book had spent more time uncovering the truth about Quentin and seeing him brought to justice, and less time faffing about. They should have struggled more, rather than for Hollis to seek Valentina and for Valentina to simply hand over the documents like it wasn't a big deal. And to consider they're all ready to throw down about it, whereas before they needed proof? Also, so Reed did not want to fight until they had proof. Eaton runs off and 2 days later returns with an entire army. And when they were at the gates of the castle, all of the guards turned against their king. Was everybody so willing to throw down about Quentin's accused misdeeds without actually reading the letters? Every single citizen in isolate? And in the end, the bit with Jameson almost felt like an awkward afterthought. It was tacked on so lazily, and it almost felt like it deserved a third book simply so that we could explore all of this. Except, that ending! Why? Why would you write that? It has got to be the second worst ending that I have ever read. Hands down. The first being that romance novel that I read where 90% of the book ended up being a stress-induced hallucination. Overall, I thought that there were a lot of really good moments scattered throughout this. The theme of the role reversal that were scattered throughout the final scenes at the end of this. The enemies to lovers relationship between Hollis and Eaton. But as I remember the first book, I mainly think about the twist at the end, and now that I can put it into the author's grand scheme, even that seems kind of dumb, especially since there was little that actually built up to it. And that ending with Jameson, why the hell would you write that? So, while I do say that there was a lot of good moments with this series, most of the good was bogged down by stuff that was honestly too stupid for words. A month from now, I'm not going to remember this poetic switch of Hollis being compared to the sun to being compared to the moon. No, what I'm going to remember is the freaking sword scene and cringe a little every single time. Anyway, I know that this is usually the part where I tell you what book that I'm going to be reading through next. However, in case you hadn't heard, I'm getting married in November. I've already stopped posts for Patreon and my main blog, although this one was dragged out because of my weekly schedule. While I don't have an exact date for when I'm going to start back up again, it's my intention to come back probably no later than February. But, we'll see. I do have some books queued up for YouTube for when I do get back, and here's a preview of the next 2 outfits for the books that I'll be reading. Can you guess what the books are? Thanks for listening to my Booksucker on YouTube. New videos are up every Monday, but stick around because I sometimes drop random videos on other days too. Just as a reminder, even if you can't financially support me, there are other ways to help me out. The first is watching this video as well as all my other videos. It's also important to like and subscribe. Finally, you can share this video with all of your friends so that they can help as well. If you're already caught up with all of my videos, you can go to Tumblr for my main book Snarks, always free and updated every morning. And if you've already read all of my main Snarks, then you can find even more Snark on my Patreon. You can access it for $1 a month. Members also get early access to my main Tumblr Snark. Special thanks to Dawn, Phoebe, and Nikki for supporting me on Patreon already. If you want to hear your name in my video next week, you either support me on Patreon or make a one-time donation. Do you like my Snarks so much that you want me to snark your writing? I do that too. For just $6 per chapter, I will tell you how awful that your writing is. But not to worry if you feel like you couldn't take the criticism. I also offer regular book editing as well, just 1 cent per word. You can contact me on any of my social media platforms if you have further questions. If you want to read some of the things that I've written, you can purchase my works on Amazon. I have a slew of erotic short stories and 2 full-length novels. I also frequently run flash sales on my stories, and if you aren't following me on any social media, you might want to do so just so you can know when I might be offering things for free. Links for everything will be posted below. I will see you when I get back.